Ethan Miller had lived alone on his ranch for many years, long enough that most people in the nearby valley town knew him only as the quiet man who preferred horses over long conversations. He liked the calmness of early mornings, when the sun rose slowly behind the hills, turning the dry grass into a sea of gold. His ranch sat far from the main road, so people rarely came by unless they needed help with a lost cow or a broken wagon wheel. Ethan did not mind helping others, but he chose to stay out of town matters. Life seemed easier that way. On one warm afternoon, Ethan was riding along his fence line, checking for any weak boards. The wind carried the faint smell of pine trees, and his horse walked lazily, enjoying the peaceful moment. Ethan tugged his hat lower over his eyes to block the bright sunlight. Everything felt ordinary, the way it always did at this hour. Quiet, predictable, and safe. Then, suddenly, something unusual caught his attention. He noticed movement far ahead, a small figure running across the open field. At first, he thought it might be a runaway calf or maybe a dog, but as the shape came closer, Ethan realized it was a child. A girl, running fast, as if she had been running for a long time. Her clothes were dusty, her hair was messy, and even from a distance Ethan could see her exhaustion. "Easy, boy," Ethan whispered to his horse as he nudged it forward. The horse picked up speed, and soon Ethan reached the girl, who had finally slowed down enough to catch her breath. She looked no older than 12. Her face was red from running, and tears had made streaks on her dusty cheeks. She looked frightened, but also determined. Ethan stepped down from his horse, concerned but gentle. "Hey there," he said softly. "Are you all right?" The girl shook her head quickly, her breath still uneven. Please help," she said in a trembling voice. "My mother. She's in trouble." Ethan knelt slightly so he would not tower over her. "Tell me your name first," he said, keeping his voice calm. "My name is Mei Lin," she replied, still trying to control her breathing. "My mother's name is Li Hua. We came here some months ago. She works in the settlement. She cooks food for the workers." Ethan nodded. He had heard of new families moving into the valley. Many people had started coming from different places, hoping to find work or build a new life. He had seen a few of them from afar, but never had reason to speak with them. "What happened to your mother?" he asked. Mei Lin's eyes filled with fresh tears, but she wiped them quickly, as if she didn't have time to waste on crying. "Some settlers, they don't like her," she said quietly. "They say things because she is from China. They treat her unfairly, and today they were very unkind. I got scared and ran to find help." She looked up at him, her small hands trembling. "You were the only person I could think of. People say you are kind." Ethan felt a heaviness in his chest. He wasn't used to hearing such desperate words. He preferred a simple life, free of problems and arguments. But the fear in the child's eyes stirred something inside him. He remembered being young himself, depending on adults when things felt too big to handle. He looked at Mei Lin again and realized how brave she was. Running across fields alone, not knowing if anyone would help, it took courage. She trusted him without really knowing him, and that trust alone made Ethan feel responsible. "How far is the settlement from here?" he asked. "Not too far," she said. "Please, we have to go quickly." Ethan took a deep breath. He did not like stepping into other people's conflicts, but he also could not imagine ignoring a child asking for help. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, reassuring her. "All right," he said. "I'll help you. You're safe now." Mei Lin looked relieved, but the worry in her eyes remained. Ethan helped her onto his horse, lifting her carefully so she could sit comfortably. Then he climbed up behind her and guided the horse toward the settlement. As they rode, the wind dried the remaining tears on Mei Lin's face. She held the saddle tightly, still shaken. Ethan spoke softly to her, trying to distract her from distress. "How long have you and your mother been here?" he asked. "Almost 6 months," she replied. "Mother works every day. She cooks, cleans, and she never complains. She always tells me to be polite and to help others." Maylin looked down. But some people still say unkind things. Ethan listened attentively. He could sense the sadness in her voice. The valley had changed quickly in the past year. New settlers had arrived, some from distant places, some with different languages and ways of living. Many locals were friendly, but a few struggled with accepting changes. Ethan had always believed that kindness made a place stronger, but not everyone saw it that way. "She must be a strong woman," he said gently. Maylin nodded. "She is. She tells me never to be afraid of who we are. She says we came here to work hard and build a better life." A small pause followed. But today, people lost their patience. Ethan guided the horse around a patch of uneven land. "Did your mother send you to get help?" he asked. "No," Maylin said. "I ran on my own. I tried to ask some people nearby, but no one listened. Everyone was nervous. I didn't know what else to do." Her voice cracked briefly, and Ethan felt another pull inside his heart. He had always avoided being part of town problems, but now he realized that sometimes people needed someone who wasn't afraid to step in, not with anger, but with calmness. "Don't worry," Ethan said in a steady voice. The journey felt long for Maylin, though it was only a short ride. She kept turning her head as if she feared she had left her mother behind for too long. Ethan guided the horse faster, hoping they would reach the settlement before the situation grew worse. As they approached the settlement, Ethan noticed something different in the air. The usual lively atmosphere seemed replaced with discomfort. People stood in small groups, whispering quietly. Some looked toward Ethan and Maylin with surprise, others with confusion. The settlement was a mix of small houses, wooden sheds, and cooking stalls. Smoke from afternoon meals usually rose into the sky, but today the place felt unusually tense. Even Ethan, who rarely visited, could feel it. Maylin pointed toward the area where her mother worked. "Over there," she said quickly. "We're almost there," Ethan nodded, tightening his grip on the reins. He had stepped into situations before: lost travelers, injured workers, frightened animals, but this felt different. This involved people's hearts, misunderstandings, and the fear of someone who just wanted a safe place to work. He hoped he could bring calm to the moment. As they rode deeper into the settlement, some people stepped aside, watching silently. Ethan kept his focus forward, guiding the horse steadily. Maylin sat stiffly, anxious to reach her mother. Finally, they arrived near the cooking area. Ethan could see a small crowd gathered. He couldn't hear what was being said, but he hoped they weren't too late. He brought the horse to a stop, and Maylin quickly looked around, searching for her mother. Before Ethan could ask anything else, she gasped softly. "There she is." Ethan followed her gaze and saw a woman sitting on the ground, looking shaken and overwhelmed. Others stood nearby, unsure what to do next. Ethan placed a steady hand on Maylin's back. "I'm here," he said. "We'll take care of this." And with that, he stepped down from his horse, ready to help in a way he had never expected when his day began. The quiet rancher, who preferred silence to problems, now found himself walking toward a moment where kindness was needed more than ever. Ethan gently helped Maylin down from the horse, and together they walked toward the settlement's center. The tension in the air still bothered him. People stood around as if they were trying to pretend nothing had happened, yet their uneasy expressions showed otherwise. Some whispered to each other. Others avoided making eye contact with Ethan, and a few simply stepped aside as he passed. Ethan was used to quiet places, not groups filled with discomfort like this. He could tell that something deeper had been building in this place long before today. Maylin walked close to him, holding the side of his jacket, as if afraid he might disappear. Even though she was brave enough to run all the way to find help, she was still just a child trying to deal with more than any child should face. Her small steps were quick and nervous. She kept looking in every direction, as if searching for her mother again, afraid she might lose sight of her. Ethan kept his pace steady for her sake. He wanted her to feel that they were moving forward together and that she wasn't alone anymore. He didn't rush, but he didn't slow down either. He knew the best help he could offer right now was calmness. As they walked through the settlement, Mei Lin began telling him more about the place and the people. Her voice was soft, filled with uncertainty. But she tried her best to explain. When we first came here, she said, people were mostly kind. They liked my mother's cooking, and some even said she made the best noodles they ever tasted. Mother was very happy. She said this would be our new beginning. Ethan listened carefully, nodding. He could picture Li Hua working quietly in the cooking area, preparing meals for tired settlers at the end of each long day. He knew how comforting good food could be in a rough place. People should have appreciated that, not made things harder. But then more new settlers came, Mei Lin continued. Some of them didn't know us. They didn't talk to us much. Mother said maybe they were just busy or tired. But I felt they didn't want to be near us. Ethan understood. Change wasn't always easy for people. Some accepted new neighbors quickly, but others needed time. Sometimes, when people didn't understand someone's background or language, they reacted with fear instead of curiosity. Ethan had seen similar things happen before, even if he tried to stay away from these situations. Your mother sounds like a strong and patient person, Ethan said, hoping to reassure her. She is, Mei Lin said with a small smile. She always tried to be kind, even when some people didn't talk nicely. She told me that kindness can calm any storm if we keep showing it. Ethan admired that thought. He believed in quiet strength too. He knew kindness often softened hearts. But he also knew that sometimes people needed a gentle reminder to see the good in others. They kept walking, and the settlement's noise slowly grew clearer. Pots clattered in the distance. A few people stepped in and out of their small wooden homes, and the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty ground. The settlement was not large, but it was full of different families trying to build new lives. Everyone had arrived here with hopes, fears, and stories of their own. As they passed by a group of workers repairing a shed, the men paused and watched Ethan with curiosity. One of them lifted his hand slightly in a greeting, but his expression showed uncertainty. Ethan gave a polite nod back but didn't stop. He did not want to delay their task. Ethan noticed that some of the settlers seemed confused about his presence. They probably wondered why he was walking around with a child he had never met before. But Ethan didn't pay attention to their stares. He knew why he was here, and that was enough. Mei Lin pointed ahead toward a small open area near a long wooden table where meals were usually prepared. We're close, she said quietly. As they drew nearer, Ethan saw a few people standing around, speaking in low tones. They looked uneasy. Not angry or upset anymore, more like they wanted to act but didn't know how. Some of them glanced toward the cooking area, where Li Hua had been earlier, but now they simply avoided the spot. Mei Lin's grip tightened on Ethan's jacket. I don't like how everyone looks, she whispered. It's all right, Ethan replied softly. I'm with you. They reached the area with the wooden tables and cooking pots. Ethan's eyes searched the surroundings carefully. The place seemed calm, but something felt missing. The usual warmth of the cooking area, the familiar smell of food, the sound of Li Hua's gentle voice, humming as she worked. Instead, everything was silent and heavy. Mei Lin stopped walking and looked around anxiously. Mother was here earlier, she said. She should be near. Ethan scanned the area again. He saw a few women talking in soft voices, their faces looking a little guilty, as if they wished they had done something more helpful earlier. He noticed a man wiping his hands nervously on his apron. The more he looked, the more he felt that people regretted how things turned out, but they didn't know how to fix it. Let's look around, Ethan said. She must be nearby. They walked past the cooking tables and toward a small shaded corner behind the main working area. That was when Mei Lin's eyes brightened. There, she cried softly. Ethan followed her gaze and sighed with relief. He saw Li Hua sitting on a wooden crate under the shade of a tree. She was holding her apron and breathing slowly, trying to calm herself. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were steady, showing that she was trying to stay composed for her daughter's sake. Mother, Mei Lin called, running toward her. Li Hua looked up, surprised. Her face softened immediately when she saw her daughter. She opened her arms and held Mei Lin close as the girl wrapped herself around her. Ethan kept a respectful distance, giving them space for their reunion. A moment passed before Li Hua lifted her gaze to Ethan. She gave him a grateful nod, recognizing he must have been the one Mei Lin sought for help. Ethan returned the nod with a small, reassuring smile. Some settlers who had been standing nearby slowly turned to look. Their uncertainty shifted into curiosity again. But this time, their eyes seemed less tense. They could see that someone from outside the settlement had stepped in calmly, not to argue or blame, but to help bring peace. Li Hua gently stroked Mei Lin's hair. She whispered something to her daughter, which made the girl hold her even tighter. Ethan watched them quietly. He didn't want to interrupt, but he knew they couldn't stay here long if the air was still filled with discomfort. After a few minutes, Li Hua finally stood up. She walked toward Ethan with Mei Lin beside her. She bowed her head politely. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice had a slight tremble, but it was still warm. "My daughter tells me you came to help. I'm glad you're all right," Ethan said sincerely. "That's what matters." Li Hua nodded again. "We didn't mean to trouble anyone. We only wanted to work and live quietly." "I know," Ethan replied. "Sometimes people misunderstand others, but misunderstandings can be cleared." Li Hua seemed relieved by his calmness. She looked around at the settlers who were still watching. Some of them looked down, avoiding her eyes. It wasn't anger. They simply didn't know how to approach her now. Ethan could feel the unsettled emotion around them, but he also sensed the possibility of change. People were unsure, but they were no longer acting out of fear or frustration. They just needed guidance toward understanding. He looked at Li Hua and Mei Lin. "Let's sort this out," he said gently. "Together." Li Hua breathed deeply, nodding. Mei Lin held Ethan's hand lightly, trusting him completely now. The three of them walked toward the small crowd, ready to clear the air, ready to create calm where there had been tension. Ethan wasn't sure how the conversation would unfold, but he knew one thing for certain: kindness always opened more doors than anger, and he was determined to help everyone see that. Ethan stood calmly beside Li Hua and Mei Lin as they approached the group of settlers gathered near the cooking area. He could sense that the people were unsure about what to say or do, but their faces showed more hesitation than anger now. The air felt heavy, but not unfriendly. It was the kind of atmosphere where people wanted peace, but didn't know how to take the first step. Ethan understood that feeling well. Many times in his life, he had wanted to say something kind or helpful, but the words felt stuck, held back by uncertainty. He didn't blame anyone here for feeling confused. He believed that misunderstandings often came from fear, not from dislike, and fear could be eased with calm words. Li Hua stood slightly behind him, holding Mei Lin's hand. Her eyes looked gentle but tired. She wasn't upset, just shaken. Yet there was a quiet strength in the way she stood, as if she had faced harder days in her past and learned how to hold her heart steady. Mei Lin, still gripping her mother tightly, watched the settlers with wide, hopeful eyes. Ethan took a slow breath and stepped forward. The settlers looked at him expectantly. Everyone in the valley knew Ethan as the rancher who never raised his voice, a man who solved problems with patience instead of arguments. His presence alone made people relax, even when they didn't admit it. "Good afternoon," Ethan began in a calm voice. "I think we should talk." The settlers exchanged glances. Some nodded slightly. Others shifted their feet as if unsure how to respond. A woman in a brown apron stepped a little closer, her expression softening. She looked like she wanted to speak but didn't know where to start. Ethan continued, careful with his words. "I know today has been difficult, and I know everyone here has been tired from long days of work. But sometimes, when we are tired, we misunderstand each other. We forget that we are all trying to make a life in this same place." A few settlers lowered their eyes. Ethan's voice remained gentle, never accusing or blaming. "I understand that changes in a community can make people feel unsure," he said. "When new families come, when new languages and new customs appear, it can feel unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean unwelcome. Every person here came from somewhere else once." A man at the back of the group sighed quietly, nodding as if remembering his own journey years ago. Ethan looked at Li Hua and Mei Lin. This family came here to work, not to trouble anyone. They came here hoping to build a peaceful life. They work hard. They show respect to everyone, and they wish to be part of this community. Li Hua's eyes glistened slightly, moved by the kindness in Ethan's words. Ethan turned back to the settlers. Sometimes people say things they don't fully mean when they're frustrated. Sometimes people follow others without thinking carefully. And sometimes, people act before understanding someone else's heart. If you are come, a soft murmuring spread through the group, like they were beginning to realize their own mistakes. Ethan relaxed his shoulders and spoke even more gently. What matters now is not what happened earlier. What matters is what we choose to do next. We can choose understanding. We can choose kindness. We can choose to welcome rather than fear. The woman in the brown apron stepped forward finally. Her face looked regretful. Mr. Miller, I think some of us acted without thinking, she admitted quietly. Li Hua has always been polite. She works harder than anyone here. I don't think she deserved to feel unwelcome. She looked directly at Li Hua. I am sorry. Li Hua bowed her head slightly, her expression warm and forgiving. Thank you, she said softly. I never wanted to cause worry. Another man stepped forward, rubbing the back of his neck shyly. I suppose I should say sorry too, he muttered. I didn't mean to make things worse. I was just tired. And when I'm tired, I don't always behave the way I should. Ethan nodded approvingly. Apologies did not need to be perfect, only honest. One by one, a few more settlers approached. They spoke simple words. I'm sorry. We didn't mean it. We'll do better. But every word was sincere. Mei Lin's eyes widened softly as she watched. She seemed surprised that people who were scared or distant earlier were now speaking kindly. Ethan noticed something important. The group wasn't angry at Li Hua. They were ashamed of how things had gone. All they needed was someone to help guide them toward understanding. Ethan smiled gently and addressed everyone again. It takes courage to admit mistakes, he said, and it takes even more courage to build trust again. But every community grows stronger when people choose reconciliation instead of distance. A small breeze swept through the settlement, making the cooking pots clink together lightly. It felt as if the whole place was breathing again after holding its breath for too long. Li Hua took a step forward herself. She clasped her hands politely. I thank you all, she said. I know new places can be difficult. I know I do not speak the same way, and sometimes I do not understand everything. But I always wish to bring comfort through my cooking and my work. If I made anyone uncomfortable, I am sorry for that too. She didn't need to apologize, and Ethan knew that. But her gentle nature made everyone around her feel at ease. Her words softened even the stiffest faces in the crowd. No, said the woman in the brown apron quickly. You have never done anything wrong. You have been nothing but kind. A few others nodded in agreement. Ethan felt the last threads of tension lift away. It wasn't gone completely. He knew healing took time, but the hardest part was over. They had finally reached a place where understanding could grow. Mei Lin let go of her mother and looked up at Ethan with a bright, relieved smile. Her face finally relaxed after hours of worry. She seemed lighter, as if the weight she had been carrying had slipped away. Ethan placed his hand gently on her shoulder. He felt proud of her courage. Without her, this moment might never have happened. The settlers seemed unsure of what to do next, but Ethan stepped forward again, giving them a warm but encouraging smile. I think we can all agree on something, he said. This place is home to every person who lives here, whether they arrived last week, last year, or 10 years ago. And every home becomes brighter when we support each other. The settlers nodded. Some smiled. A few even looked relieved, as if they had wanted peace all along, but didn't know how to reach for it. One man approached Li Hua with a gentle tone. If you need anything more cooking supplies, or help with the tables, let us know. We'll be glad to help. Li Hua bowed gratefully. Thank you. That means a lot. Mei Lin stepped forward shyly and spoke to the group. Thank you for understanding, she whispered. I was very scared earlier. But her innocence touched everyone. A few women smiled warmly at her, as if remembering their own daughters at her age. Ethan felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Not pride, just a deep belief that doing the right thing was always worth the effort. He saw in the settlers' faces a mixture of relief and renewed respect. They no longer looked unsure or defensive. They looked ready to build something better. He turned to Li Hua and Mei Lin. Would you both like to return home for now? He asked softly. It might help to rest. Li Hua nodded gratefully. Yes. Thank you. Before leaving, Ethan looked back at the settlers. Remember, he said kindly, every misunderstanding can be changed with understanding. Let's keep choosing peace. As Ethan, Li Hua, and Mei Lin walked back toward his horse, the settlers stood watching with softened expressions. Some waved gently, others simply nodded. But one thing was clear. The settlement felt calmer, cleaner, and warmer than it had an hour ago. Mei Lin looked at Ethan as they walked. You really helped them, she said softly. Ethan smiled. Sometimes, people just need a little nudge in the right direction. She nodded thoughtfully, holding her mother's hand tightly. The three of them walked together in quiet unity, knowing that the hardest part of the day had finally passed. Behind them, the settlement was no longer filled with confusion. It was filled with hope, quiet, steady hope, that things could be better than before. Ethan felt a peace in his heart he hadn't felt in a long time, and he knew one thing for certain. Kindness had done its work today. He woke up the next morning with a strange calmness in his heart. It felt as if life had gone through a full circle, and now he had finally reached a point where he could breathe without fear or uncertainty. The sunlight coming through the window felt warm and soft, almost comforting. He sat on the edge of his bed, thinking about everything he had gone through, every mistake, every moment of pain, every small victory that had kept him moving forward. It was surprising how life could change so much, yet feel familiar at the same time. He stepped outside his room and noticed the world around him. The noise of everyday life, children playing, people talking, traffic moving, felt like a reminder that life continues, no matter what happens to one person. He smiled quietly at this thought. He had finally started to understand something important. Peace does not come from perfect situations but from accepting life with all its imperfections. Later that afternoon, he met his old friend who had supported him during the toughest days. They sat together at a small cafe, a place they used to visit many years ago. The atmosphere was peaceful. Soft music played in the background, and the scent of fresh tea filled the air. His friend looked at him with a curious expression, as if trying to figure out what had changed. You seem different, the friend said softly. Not tired anymore. He laughed gently. Not loudly, but with a genuine joy he had not felt in a long time. Maybe I finally learned how to let go, he replied. Maybe I stopped fighting the things I cannot change. His friend nodded with understanding. They talked for a long time about life, choices, and the lessons they had learned. The conversation was light, yet meaningful. Every word felt like a piece of healing. He realized how important it is to have people who listen without judgment, people who remind you of your own strength when you forget it. That evening, he went for a walk alone. The sky had turned a beautiful shade of orange and pink as the sun set slowly behind the buildings. The cool breeze touched his face. And for once, he did not feel weighed down by memories or fears. Instead, he felt a strange excitement about the future. The path ahead was still uncertain, but he was no longer afraid of uncertainty. It felt like he had grown stronger, not by avoiding difficulties, but by moving through them with patience. As he walked, he passed by a small park where families were enjoying the peaceful evening. Children laughed freely, running around with endless energy. He watched them for a moment, feeling a sense of calmness. Their happiness reminded him that life always offers moments of joy. No matter how complicated things become, he decided to sit on a bench near the park. From there, he could see everything: the blooming flowers, the gentle movements of the trees, the people talking and smiling. The world felt alive, and for the first time in a long time, he felt alive with it. He closed his eyes for a moment and allowed himself to simply feel the moment. He did not think about the past or worry about the future. He just existed in the present, and that was enough. Soon, he received a call from someone he had not spoken to in a long time. It was a warm, encouraging conversation. Nothing heavy or stressful. They talked like old friends who had finally reconnected. He realized how time can soften even the hardest memories, how distance can bring clarity, and how forgiveness, whether given or received, can open new doors in life. After the call, he continued walking and eventually reached a quiet corner of the city where he used to sit years ago whenever he felt lost. It was surprising how familiar the place felt. Back then, he would come here with a heavy heart, hoping for answers. But today, he felt light. He no longer needed answers. He only needed peace. And he had finally found it within himself. As he sat there, he reflected on how far he had come. There was a time when he felt stuck, confused, and unsure about everything. But life had slowly taught him that nothing stays the same forever. Pain fades, confusion clears, and new beginnings appear when one learns to wait patiently. Suddenly, a gentle thought came to him. Everything he went through had shaped him into the person he was now. The challenges had made him stronger, the losses had taught him value, and the quiet moments had taught him appreciation. He realized that he would not change any part of his journey because each step had brought him to this calmer, wiser version of himself. He stood up and started walking again, this time with a quiet confidence. He knew that his future still held challenges, but he also knew he had the strength to face them. He had learned not to run away from life, but to face it with courage and clarity. When he reached home later that night, he felt a gentle warmth in his heart. He sat by the window and looked at the night sky. The stars appeared brighter than usual, as if reminding him that even darkness has its beauty. He smiled softly, feeling grateful for the people who had stayed with him, for the challenges that had shaped him, and for the peaceful life he was slowly building. Before going to sleep, he made a small promise to himself. He promised to move forward with kindness, to cherish every moment, and to never let fear stop him from living. He also promised to forgive himself for the mistakes of the past, because he finally understood that mistakes do not define a person, they teach and they guide. That night, he slept peacefully. No worries disturbed his rest. No heavy memories pulled him back. His heart felt light, and his mind felt clear. For the first time in many years, he felt hopeful about tomorrow. In the days that followed, he continued to grow in ways he never expected. He started new routines, met new people, and slowly built a life filled with purpose and calmness. Each day felt like a step toward something better. He wasn't rushing anymore. He wasn't running away anymore. He was simply living, learning, and evolving. People around him noticed the change. They saw how relaxed and focused he had become. Some even said he looked younger, as if the stress had melted away. He would laugh and say, "Maybe I just stopped carrying what wasn't meant for me." His journey had taught him the biggest lesson. Life becomes peaceful when one learns to let go of unnecessary burdens and embrace the present with gratitude. Months passed, and he became even stronger emotionally. He no longer feared being alone or making decisions. He understood himself better and respected his own boundaries. He made choices based on peace instead of pressure. Everything felt different, and everything felt right. One quiet evening, while sitting by the same window where he often reflected, he realized something important. His story was not about pain, loss, or struggle. His story was about growth, renewal, and learning how to live again. It was a story of rising slowly, step by step, until he finally found himself. He knew that life would still bring challenges, but he also knew he had discovered the strength to face them with patience. He had learned that happiness is not something grand or distant. It is hidden in small, everyday moments. A peaceful morning, a warm conversation, a gentle smile, a calm evening. He looked at the sky one last time before closing the window. He whispered softly to himself, with a quiet confidence he had earned through years of struggle and healing. I am ready for whatever comes next. And with that thought, he walked forward into the next chapter of his life, carrying peace in his heart and hope in his steps.